and her son, an amazing kid. Well, he's a young man now, but he played lacrosse. I saw him play lacrosse a few times. I think that's how I first met Raul, and he's doing great things. So, hey man, so let's talk about you and the men that was influenced in your life. Your father, grandfather, uncle, or who, great grandfather. Who was influential to make you the man who you are today?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, thanks for providing the space. I appreciate you and the show. Father Forever. I know that we've been trying to get together forever.
Yeah.
So I know COVID kind of put a dent on stuff. We share my sister Kathy, who's a pillar of our family. I think she's done a great job. With Noah, who you talked about.
Amazing.
Right? And
amazing
so shout out
job.
to Noah and Kathy. Hopefully we'll be catching this.
Noah's your nephew.
Yes, Noah's my nephew, the lacrosse player, right?
Yeah.
And so someone that was very near and dear to my heart and in my humble beginnings as a man was my dad. And so when I thought about getting together today, I naturally thought about my dad. And as you see, I got my Dodger jersey on because that was the core memory that when I think about my dad, who I lost in 2021 to COVID. We shared the Dodger, kind of experience together, Fernando Mania.
That was big. That was big.
Yeah. And so, when I think about my dad, I think about the trip to the fish store. He would always go get his fish before we go up to the stadium, and then we would just enjoy watching the game, sometimes listening to either Jaime Jalin, play it on the radio while we were watching the game. So for years, right? Just like Vince Scully, right? So that's who I think about when I think about my earliest childhood memories. And then of course I start going into my little league coaches, my high school coaches. Really, sports was my anti-drug, anti-gang involvement to the degree where others that didn't continue to pursue that student athlete path ended up kind of being eaten up by the circumstances around us.
Let me interject here because the drug scene was a big scene back then. I mean, I don't know if I told you, but we're very transparent, man.
Sure.
Because we're here to help men, young men of whatever age, to be better fathers, and they may have been in a situation like yours that the drug scene was there, and was it involvement of yours or?
Yeah, the neighborhood and the block specifically where I grew up on Ardmore Avenue actually served a lot of different neighborhoods and a lot of different customers. And when I talk about serve, I think you can fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks, sure.
Right, and so it was in neutral ground of these 4 different gangs that were in the area, but everybody looked like it was an understanding of a peace zone, so that they can come and do that transaction and then go on about their way. And so, seeing that perspective from a young man, I learned a lot. I seen the hustle, I seen the unfortunate need, and these were the dads of a lot of my friends. So we were just the neighborhood kids. But the dads were doing what they had to do.
Doing the business.
So, and so to realize what was happening way after, when I look back now, it's multi-layered, right? We have, the kids that are playing on the street, stickball, old school baseball, right?
But then yourself now.
Yeah. But then you have, the dads that are having to do the hustle. And somewhere in between, inning 3 or 4 or 5 of stickball, here come the cops. And I'm talking about Rampart. So this was not, I grew up in the Rampart area, and so to have all those elements as a young man and then to see, what all that meant when the officers would get there, and that was the days of crash, so they were, asking questions later. They were just assuming everybody's affiliated, busting in there. And so thankfully we've come a long way since then, but those childhood memories are are still there, right?
That's a tough question. Now, was your dad involved in that, or he kept you away from that?
No. So luckily, my dad, again, we shared the Dodger experience as early on. My mom and my dad were divorced since I was 2, but
Okay.
my dad earned his title as a father.
Nice.
He
nice.
was always present. I didn't have to
He was your
steal.
role model.
Yeah, I didn't have to steal from nobody. I always had just enough, right? And that was a big difference from a lot of the kids that I grew up with. You know, if they had their dad, a lot of their dad had a hustle, right? In different ways. And so sometimes their dad was around, sometimes there wasn't. You know, the jail system, right, was a revolving door. But also, a lot of the kids that I grew up with, they didn't know their dad. They had stepdads, or they had coaches, or somebody else that was filling in that role. So I just appreciated that I got to know who my dad was, that he was present. I knew he loved me, and financially, he always made sure that we had enough.
So because your dad, he set the level for you whenever you decided to become a father.
Absolutely.
On how he's going to be a father to your child, your children.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, that's a good segue to Valentina. and you're a girl dad now. You know, I say the name, there's a big smile on your face and all that.
Yes.
You know, and she's an amazing young lady. I've seen her on Instagram. She's been to the White House. Dad took her to the White House.
Yes.
You know, and matter of fact, because of my relationship with Kathy, one of the books that I wrote, you know, she was one of the girls, and you was one of the dads in the book.
Right.
You know, because Kathy spoke so highly of you as a father, man.
I appreciate it.
You know, and like you know, and she knows how deep that is to my heart. So let's talk about fatherhood, man.
Wow.
Personally,
Yeah. Well, girl dad.
are you married?
No, I'm not.
You're not married,
No,
okay.
No, so no rings on my finger anymore. I was married, and
Okay.
so I met Valentina's beautiful mom way back when. Courted her for about 3 years. We got married, and it lasted about 3 years. And then we realized that, you know, probably what was the best decision to co-parent was to do exactly that, to co-parent, right, from separate households. And so, because we took that decision early on, Valentina has been acclimated to this type of setting where she sees it like, wow, I got 2 homes. And there's like 2 different cultures at these homes. But this, where we're sitting at right now, has been home for Valentina her entire life. She was brought from White Memorial Hospital straight here to where this facility here. This is all she knows, right?
You know, you brought up a good point, and I want the fathers, the young fathers, or even middle-aged fathers to our children at home. Your kids don't need to see you fuss and cuss
No.
with your wife or your husband. That's not the key. That's,
No. And you know what? I in that process, my dad was still alive there, and you know, we tried to keep it together as much, whether it was through spiritual guidance, tried to have, as much, conversation as we could, but we got to a point where we realized that wasn't going to continue. And unfortunately, a cycle of mom and dad not staying together, both on her mom's side and now on my side, as the dad, that hadn't happened. But something that I also see a lot of Latino families do, they stay together knowing that it's not going to work out for the kids. And then what they don't realize is that it's 18 years of misery for the kid in silence, though. Because the parents think that they did everything right by staying together, while the kids the whole time have known that there's no joy there, that there's no happiness. Versus what I realized as an adult, it wasn't a bad thing that Raul Sr. and Senora Grace, my mom, did not stay together. I actually think that benefited me because I love both of my parents. Our kids are always going to love our parents, right? As long as you're present, as long as there's a relationship. And so I wanted to give our daughter that opportunity to love both parents.
man, that's a critical point that you just made, Raul, because the children, they love both parents,
Yeah.
And when they're going back and forth, or in a lot of cases, far too many cases, is that you will have a mother talk bad about the father to the child, or the father talk bad about the mother to the child, and like confusion comes into play, man.
And I suffered through that, right? As a kid, my dad, God rest his soul, not one time did he ever talk bad about my mom, not once. And so that's something that was instilled in me very early on. Is that he would always be like, "One day you'll understand." In Spanish, "Un día vas a entender." I'd be like, "Come on, what are you talking about?" You know, because my mom, and I love my mama, right? Man, she has something to say about my dad every day, you know, and so it wasn't always positive, right?
Yeah.
She throws some positive vibes in there from here and there, but that really jaded me, you know, and so it created some anger towards my dad as well on things that maybe he was guilty of, maybe he wasn't, but I wasn't there. And so that is where I learned on the flip side that the kid's reality is the kid's reality.
Man,
Let that happen, whatever that is. And we have a chance right now, Valentina's 9 going on 10, to really continue, I think, a great job that we have done as co-parents now into the future, because God willing, 9 years from now, we'll be walking around to a college campus.
hey, don't blink twice, 'cause I'm not using it, boy. She almost turned out right there. You know, but you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because you know, when a person sees you, sees how successful you are, man, sees how great that you're doing, and they think, hey man, your life, this guy's lived the perfect life. So far from the truth, right?
Yeah.
You know, so we want all these fathers to know, hey man, life is a grind. Life is hard with both parents in the household. You know, and they'll get along good. You know, because life is, that's just how life is. You know, yeah, man, I'm proud that you and Valentina's mother, that you guys took the high road, because some ugliness can come into play. Because you know, when people get their feelings hurt, everybody's different. And if you suffer from it as a child, you see this, you know, reappearing again. You go to other angles that are not healthy for you, and especially for the child, or in some cases, children.
And that's why I appreciate what you're doing, right? Is that unfortunately our case is not unique. I mean, just look at the divorce rates, right? And it ends up happening at least half the time that it doesn't work out. But then, you know, you've had kids, and so I think that we have a certain responsibility to a certain age with these kids, and then the word teaches us that we have to let go of these kids because they're no longer kids, and they have to go and learn. And so what I've tried to do, and I thank her mother for doing this with me, has been to set up Valentina the best way that we can for success. And so Valentina is so dynamic because she has, I would say, 2 dynamic parents that have exposed her to a lot of perks, a lot of the great things. But it has been a lot of hard work. There has been a lot of sweat and tears that go into this, because we're human and we have bad moments. And if you're already working on a team, that's hard, right? As you said. Imagine that you decided not to be on the same team, but you have this common player that you are invested in. You're a coach, right? And so how we figure out what's best for this one player, right? Our daughter here, could be of differences of opinions, but how we communicate that is key. And I'm just very thankful that Valentina now has been shining through all of that.
You know, and that's great, because you and her mother had to make a choice. You know, someone could have held on to this anger because of what you did, because of what you didn't do, or because what she did, what she didn't do. You know, and reality sets in, like, and maturity sets in, like your dad said. You'll understand one day.
And that's what that was the point I forgot to mention in my last comment. Your organization now gives these dads a platform. I had to ask my dad, why didn't he fight for me in court? And I remember when I was little, that he missed a court date because it had gotten so heated between my mom and my dad. And I asked him, like, why didn't he show up? And he said, you know, at that time, it was just best for you to be with your mom, and for me to just continue to, play the role that I was playing, right? The visitation and the financial support and just, and that took me some time to understand.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because you were a kid.
Yeah, and it was the 80s. So even the court systems were different, right? For you to go up to a court in the 80s as an immigrant Salvadorian, talking about you're fighting for your kid, very different than the privilege that I have to be able to come as an American citizen now, thanks to my immigrant parents, and have to go into court. I mean, it wasn't easy in the beginning. We had to go to court, right? The divorce, hey, we agreed on, right?
Okay.
I didn't want that, but I got served some papers and that happened, right? I asked for some time apart as far as separation, but I didn't really think that this was going to get to that point because I just felt, hey, we needed a time out. We needed to be able to regroup, right? And the divorce came and I was processing that, but I was shocked when my fathering came into question, right? And so the fact is I was not going to jeopardize my fatherhood, my reputation with and to my daughter then or now that we're in the future.
Right.
Because if I wouldn't have fought the way my dad felt that he couldn't or that he shouldn't, then I would have never had this experience, because one of the things that my dad always knew, and before he had multiple kids, he was a Rolling Stone.
Papa was a Rolling Stone?
Yeah, so again, something that I've tried to change as well, right? And understanding that, I haven't remarried, I haven't, it's been a process of going through a marriage, going through co-parenting and a divorce, all of that.
It's work, man.
Yeah, and it's work on yourself, I would say, right? But the rebound doesn't work and all of that doesn't work, so going back and landing on Valentina and going through the court system, I was privileged and I was grateful that I got to go through it, that the court found that 50-50 was best for our daughter.
Was it male or female judge?
I think they rotated, mostly were male.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a couple. But I remember one judge looked at both of us and said, you know what? You guys are better than this. Like, it was like this disappointment on both of us that we had to even be in the court to figure this out. But to your point, a lot of emotions, we're human, and so I want to say the last 3 years have been so much better, cordial. Valentina has really flourished, and now she's getting to an age where she knows, she understands, what's going on. So I'm now helping young men to navigate the system to make sure that they're present, because what ends up happening with young dads, and this is to all the young dads out there, keep fighting for your kids. Protect your kids at all times. And there's nothing more valuable, and this is something I had to explain to my dad because he had younger kids, right? I said, Dad, be present. Be present, because that's priceless, and I appreciate everything that you, every dollar, every cent, every Nintendo game, all the Jordans. But if you would have been home, or if you would have been at the games, now he used to hide at the games because he didn't want to make me nervous. But when in high school, I would tell him, I want to see you there. But it was already in it. It was this thing where he would watch me from the parking lot. He'd be watching me from the tree or something, right? So with Valentina, though, I took a different, a more hands-on approach.
She was looking for daddy there.
All the time.
Yeah. When I speak to father, the organization, whatever, I say, look, the best gift you can give your child, not Disneyland, not a car, not the best gift you give your child is your time.
Yes.
Because they will remember that much longer than they will remember the stuff.
They're gonna remember how you make them feel. Disneyland is a moment. When you ask them what they want for their quinceañera, a car or quinceañera, they're first gonna tell you the car. And then when you get 4 weeks closer to the quinceañera, they're gonna tell you they want the quinceañera too. So don't go ask them, brother. Just give yourself, give your time.
Give of yourself.
Valentina's been crawling in conference rooms since the age of 5 months. And she's the same age that she's been in a swimming pool.
So it's a norm for her. You're exposing her, and see that's what we have to do as fathers. We expose our children to different things. Every year we have, and hopefully you'll be able to attend this year. Every year we go to Newport Beach. We have a kayak event.
Nice.
And it's for kids from the inner city, like they've never been kayaking before.
Yeah.
So one thing I did want to bring up, Father Forever, we have what we call the diamond culture, okay? And we encourage fathers to embrace these 4 elements. One is, in this order, spiritual wellness, whatever your belief is, because we don't push belief, whatever your belief is, because we all believe there's a supreme being that runs this whole thing, okay? Number 2 is mental wellness.
Jesus!
Mental wellness. God, hey, we don't have all the information, man. We don't have all the tools. So, see, a psychiatrist, psychologist, that's okay. That means you're getting more tools for an arsenal.
Absolutely.
That's all. You'd be able to see things in a different view.
Therapy is okay.
It's priceless.
It is.
It's priceless. And number 3 is physical wellness.
Yes.
You cannot come home.
Yeah.
No, I understand the Dodgers and the Rams and the Chargers and USC, UCLA. I understand all that, but take your daughter, take your son out there and do stuff. Like yesterday, we were picking up my grandson from school. We threw a football for 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
My arms don't go anymore.
Right. Or take them to the game and teach them the game, not just as a superficial fan.
And the 4th and the last one, but also important, is financial wellness. You get these 4 wellness, spiritual, mental, physical, and financial wellness in here.
Yes.
You're gonna be doing okay.
And that's something that we didn't come from a lot. My mom came from Costa Rica. I would say left, paradise, because that's what most people would think. But they lived in San Jose, the capital. My grandmother, her mother had 18 kids.
Wow.
Okay, so there wasn't no TV back then. So.
Well, my question is to the same man.
Yes.
Oh wow, isn't that great?
So there you go, right?
Isn't that great?
That's where. Remember we talked
The
about
ultimate
culture and
tribe,
and they kept it together and then my dad, being Salvadoran, he fled a civil war. He was in medical school. Right?
Whoa.
And so he had to flee a war, and so one came in a plane and one came, underground. And so that perspective right there, when people start talking about the dynamics these days, my whole thing is, what are the rules of engagement, right? Like let's work on, keeping families together, right? And so at every level, right? If we want people to stay in their countries, can we help those countries be sustainable, right? Instead of dividing them up. If we are going to have asylum and we're going to have refugees, then let's create immigration reform, right? That hasn't happened from either party, right? And so the reason I bring that up is that just that background of my parents, right? Of that Central American, component, and then Latina's mom's side, right? Chicano, Mexican, and kind of that story and that movement. I've tried my very best to make sure that all of that is instilled, right? All of that legacy, the tradition, the culture into Valentina, because it's so important in the roots of our kids as they're developing.
I'm listening to you, and it's like an educational class, And so my comment I would like to make to you, to these young fathers, even younger fathers, whatever, what would you tell them? What is important? What is the key to keeping your family together with all the challenges in life that going on, whether it's employment, whether medical challenges, whatever it may be? What would you tell a young man or a young boy in school now that doesn't have any children?
I would say that one, stay the course. So to the dads, be present, find a way. Again, it's not going to be easy, but know that you have an opportunity through your child, to do things right. And you've gone through losses that are really lessons, right? You've gone through some victories that are really just best practices, right? And so you put all that together, and you make it work for your kid. How? Those are different paths, right? I would say that the number one thing that's worked for me is my getting to know and closer to God. And if I can go back, I wish I would have done that sooner.
Spiritual wellness.
Yes, spiritual wellness, right? I wish I would have done that sooner, but I also know that I had to go through what I had to go through so I can come back here.
Life lessons.
And give my testimony, right? And so
Nice.
that's where you got to use every tool in your tool belt. So it's important to invest in a good belt and good tools, and then be able to build a team around you, right? That's going to help you. They always say it takes a village forever. You know, you want to be a father forever, you're going to need a village forever.
Man, that's some powerful stuff, man. And I hope you younger guys are listening to Raul, because you're still working that, because the father is forever. She's 9 years old. You got a ways to go, buddy.
She's going on 21, but
Yeah.
you know, she actually just got back from winning a competition this weekend down in the San Diego area. She has a end of the school year performance today. She's flying out to Hawaii next week to be at her cousin's graduation, and flying back right on time for her final dance competition. And somehow we're gonna have softball practice and playoffs during that time. And I think that that's where I was going earlier, because there's so many thoughts that come in the short time, is that the biggest gift is being present. You know, you don't have to be the coach of the team, but work out with her or him, right? You don't have to be the teacher, but help find a tutor, right? Like somehow, some way, find a way to be present and explain what that presence means. That is not just a present, right? I'm being present, and it's not a gift. This is my job, and I'm here for it all, right? But it's the presence that is invaluable. It's priceless.
You know, also, when I speak, I also make a comment that children is a gift from God. What we do with that gift, with our children, is our gift back to God.
Yes.
So we have a responsibility. There's accountability that comes into play. That is major. Talking about a human being, man.
And that's why I talk about whatever hurt we went through, go get therapy. I've done it. Go to groups, go to whatever you got to do, number one. Because if you have a kid, you get another shot. And it's not another shot for your life. You've already done that. Don't do that to your kid. It's another opportunity to set the stage to see what happens if they are given that type of platform, right? And so trying to kill the generational negative cycles and turn that into generational wealth. See, that's a whole different pivot.
That's another podcast.
Right. And so that, sometimes you have to be that extreme, sometimes, right? And then because you'll fall somewhere in the middle, and it's like shooting for an A. If you end up getting a B, that's all right.
Yeah.
But if you always going shooting for that C, or at least I'm not getting an F, you're gonna get an F the whole time.
Yeah, man. I'm hoping that these fathers are understanding that being a father is the most difficult job for a man in the world. When I tell people, I said, no, it's not being a brain surgeon. It's not being a scientist. It's being a father, because we're so emotionally attached to this young boy, this young girl that's a part of you, that you're able to make it, and it's overwhelming at times, and
Oh, man.
it's heartbreaking at times, it's disappointing at times, but then it's so rewarding at times.
Well, the interesting thing for me, and I was just gonna say it's just fascinating, is that I'm living now as through the lens of a 9-year-old little girl. So as I am, and let me tell you how full circle this is, and I think we can land here if that's all right with you, on when I do anything out in the community. I organize, I advocate, whatever I'm doing, working on policy, I think of the 9-year-old Raul. Because at about 9 years old, you start knowing who's who in the Zoom, right? Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, sometimes you know that your grandparents can't do no wrong because they're just so sweet and all that, and you're scared of them and you're happy and all that, right? Like it's these dynamics. But then you start seeing, oh, you know, grandpa acts like this sometimes and grandma acts like that sometimes, right? They start putting things together, right? And I remember understanding those elements that I talked about. My friends and their dads. My dad and my mom not being together. But maybe it's okay, right? Because at first does my dad not love me? Why did he leave me? Right? Like these were all these things,
that comes into
right?
play.
And then what you're hearing from your mom, right? In my case, I was like, oh, who to believe? You know, what to believe? And so now having the opportunity again with Valentina, I see an opportunity to be able to give a different reality. Like I said, now that I'm able to see her now be 9 years old, understand and remember how it is to be 9 years old. History will repeat itself. Parents are not together, but dad is not going to talk ill will about mom. Right? I learned that. I'm going to absorb whatever she might be told, right? And take that on the chin, turn the other cheek, everything the word, whatever you got to do, because my daughter means that much. And so just changing that, I want to see if that's going to allow Valentina that room for less traumatic success. And what I mean by that, I've had traumatic success. I'm the overachiever. I've always been the shortest guy. I haven't fit in because I'm not Latino enough, I'm not black enough, I'm not whatever, right? And so but so was Jesus. He was a misfit, right? And so
I know what they did to him.
Right. And so who am I to think that that's not going to happen to me?
Exactly.
And so see that peace doesn't come, that rejoice even through pain doesn't come without me knowing the word. And let me tell you this about Valentina. She chose to be baptized about 1.5 years ago.
Wow, how nice.
Because she understood, and we had to make sure she understood what that commitment was, and they were like, hey doc, she's ready. Right? So I'm already winning. Valentina's already winning, right? And we're not perfect. We have bad moments, but we're winning.
I'm glad to hear that, man, because once again, we talk about life is a puzzle. Every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, you're putting the pieces of life together to where you understand things as you get older. You know, things are more clear now because you have a few years under your belt. But, hey, man, I want to thank you for sharing your time with me, man. I really appreciate it, man. You know, keep going through with Valentina. And you're also a mentor to some other young men in the neighborhood and all that. We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but it's critical.
And I hope you'll be able to join us. I'm mentoring some young men who are former students of mine, or former student athletes of mine. And, you know, because I was right out of college after I played college baseball, I went into teaching, physical ed, health. And so these young men, you get to see them outside of just a school element.
Right.
You see them after school, you see them on the weekends, and so you get to meet their parents and all that. Well, one of my former students, I'm the godfather of his older son, and then 2 other young men. One of them I've coached his kid at the Little League that I started, and another one I'm helping all 3 of them. 2 out of the 3, I'm sorry, go through the family court process to be able to find that equal time with their child legally. It's a very lengthy process. It's an expensive one if you don't have some guidance.
It's very frustrating.
Oh, very much so. And it can be, again, traumatic, you know, for everyone involved if it's not handled, you know, appropriately.
And the main thing you have to tell these young men, do your best not to make a bad choice or decision in dealing with this, because you might wear that orange or green jumpsuit if you're not careful. It can happen, right?
Yeah, real quick.
But once again, I want to thank you, man, and we're about to get together again, and